Hi, everyone, and welcome to the April edition of Divine Guidance on the Anika Apple podcast. I am grateful to have the opportunity to be with you here today. I am coming to you live this evening on Facebook and YouTube to deliver the divine guidance. And I'm really excited about the things that are happening. Um, I'm pausing because I'm excited, and there's some things that we've got to talk about around the sign of the times, what's happening right now in this moment that are less favorable. But I'm also really excited about the things that have been planted, the harvest season that so many people are in, and about the opportunity that is before us. So I would say a little bit of mixed feelings, but I think more than anything, I feel grateful that I have the opportunity to share the information with you in this moment, and that there are things that you can do to prepare yourself, to be aware, to really open your eyes and your heart to what's available to you in this time, and that it will give you some support and a stronger standing if you are in a place where you recognize what is happening around you. And so that is my hope and aspiration for today's broadcast, that you hear this divine guidance. For those of you that are, new to my channel or who have not heard the divine guidance, my name is Anika Apple. I'll come back and do my introduction, but I always want to make sure that you are taking whatever you hear from me, anyone else, back to God. So my encouragement to you is to take everything that you hear here and sit before God and ask God, how do I make this make sense for what is happening in my life? What is connected to me? How am I supposed to connect this to what you are showing me and directing me to do in my life? That is really, really important. And so for those of you who don't have the opportunity, or who I've not had the opportunity to connect with before, have not are new to my channel, have not heard the divine guidance, my name is Anika Apple. I'm a trusted advisor and coach. I support people with connecting back to the center of who they are, to their truth, to their purpose, so that they can live a remarkable life. And for me, that work shows up across corporate spaces, supporting C-suite and CEOs primarily, and business owners with getting creating more lines of clarity around how they drive decisions, create their organizations, and move their business forward on the kind of foundation that is frankly unshakable, because it is founded on the things that are important to God. Aside from that, I also support individuals with divine guidance sessions where I help them to really reconnect with the truth within. So that looks like connecting deeply with spirit. And what I find to be one of the most impactful parts about that work is that we all have connections. We all have gifts, and the level of maturity of gifts differs by person. And sometimes people are hearing and they know, or they're dreaming and they can see it and they're really close to trusting, but they're not sure. And part of the work that I do helps people to develop their comfort and trust in themselves and what they're hearing and they're seeing through my gifting. And so I am a prophet, and I incorporate the work that I do for God in everything that I deliver here on earth. And so thus one of my assignments is to deliver divine guidance. And so here we are on this month's podcast. So there are a couple of themes that God gave me just shortly before coming in to hit record tonight. So I will take you through those, and then I also know that there are some other things that need to come through tonight, and so I'm open for that. I've entitled this episode "The Sign of the Times" because it's really important. The biggest message, I would say, of all is that we are called to really recognize the moment that we're in, to understand what is happening around us, to begin to see. And for those of you that, do read the Bible, and, followers of Christ, I really want to encourage you to make sure that you are not just sitting with the Bible and reading passages that you have read before, but that you are asking God for a deepened understanding, that you're asking God to really show you and bring some things to light for you so that you can recognize what's happening all around you. The other thing that I would encourage you to do is if you don't, ask God to direct you where to go and what you should be reading, I would encourage you to incorporate that too. Not only is that a really great practice for us to have because we're making sure that we're first surrendering even what we are studying in the Word of God to God first, but it also is a practice of surrender. And I think that is a really important part for us as we prepare ourselves for the season. So just imagine that, you're spending time, like I love the book of John, for example, right? I actually happen to be in John right now. It's probably a bad example, but you could be spending your time there, but where God really needs you is to be in Revelation, or perhaps it's in Exodus. And so it just depends on what is happening in your season of life. So I really encourage you to include that in your practice. So there's a couple of things that I would start off with. One, as I sought God for what was important to share with you for April, the first thing that God showed me was a whirlwind. And what was really interesting about this whirlwind is like there were people being swept up into the whirlwind, like being swirled into the whirlwind, like having lost their sense of connectivity. And I want to use the word control, but it's more than that. It's the things that we call stability and security and safety. And so, this whirlwind that we're in, like just imagine the wind sweeping you up and just moving so quickly that it's really difficult for you to get your bearings. And so that indeed is what we are going to see, particularly across the next 8 or 9 months. So that whirlwind looks like you leaning into the things that you thought you knew, that you believed would always be there for you, the things that were maybe foundational to you in the way that you think about your life today, and seeing some significant shifts. Now, the shifts don't mean that they're all bad. I mean, some people could consider that having the opportunity to be held in a storm, held in the whirlwind by God, would create opportunities for new things to come. And that is the case for many. However, in this particular example, what God is showing us is that there is a great shakeup happening. And that shakeup is going to shift a lot of what you see today as the things that you cling to as being safe. The other part of this whirlwind were people who were on a pathway. So imagine, like, what I was envisioning is like people with kind of like briefcases and backpacks and handbags. And they're marching kind of in this direction. Like they know where they're going. They're very clear about what it is that they're doing. And they were very focused. And as the whirlwind came by, there was an outer layer of the whirlwind, and it came up underneath them, and it like lifted and carried them quickly into the direction that they were going. So as opposed to people being swept up and swirling around, this same wind came through and helped elevate them on the path that they were on to wherever it was that they were headed. So it gave them the opportunity to be propelled forward while these other people were swirling around. And I want you to think about the differences as I described it, right? So, this one side of it where it's like, these are all the things that you knew, that you expected, that you felt comfortable with in the past, that you believe would always be security and safety. So you're scrambling to try and make sense of like, oh my gosh, everything's changing. I wasn't prepared for this. What do I do? But then you have these other people who are calmly marching. They see the whirlwind, they know it's there, but they're just beeline focused on where it is that they're going. And they have the briefcases and the backpacks and the handbags, right? So they have the things that they need, and they're focused forward. And as the whirlwind began to grab those people and lift them up, they never broke their gaze. They never broke their glance. They were so fixated forward. It was as if they did not even know that they were being elevated. They were just focused forward. So I ask you, as you hear this, where is your focus right now? Are you thinking about the things that are worldly that are creating security and safety for you? Because I will tell you that you're going to have to surrender those things. It's going to happen one way or another. It can happen when you're in the whirlwind, or there can be things that you surrender, that you put on the altar before God now. I know that in my journey over the last year and a half, God highlight for me every place that I was holding on to something as as a sense of safety or security, and I had to surrender those things. And when I say had to surrender, maybe that doesn't sound as inviting, but I will tell you it was my choice to surrender those things. And as I know what I know, I would not have chosen anything else, because to have a relationship with something that you believe is creating safety and security from you that can be taken away from you just like that puts you at more risk than what you could even realize, right? And so as much as it feels sometimes scary to trust, what we don't know and cannot see, which we know is the way that God operates, the reality is God is also the one that never fails us, right? There may be a way that shows up that looks different than what our experience is, but we know that once we look back, when we are far enough out from the moment and we look at it, we can see how God wove it together for our good and for the glory of God. And so think about that in your time where you are trying to get comfortable surrendering, that as you surrender, it gives you an opportunity to put your trust and your faith in the one that does not fail you, as opposed to the systems that you are seeing being dismantled. For some of you that have been listening to divine guidance for the last couple of years, you're probably like, I know I've heard you say this before, because it's very similar. We are now in the time that was being foreshadowed, and we're seeing it happen. And so just pay attention to this whirlwind. And when I think about whirlwind, the other thing that comes up for me is like the thing that seemingly comes out of nowhere and moves incredibly quickly, that seemingly comes out of nowhere and moves incredibly quickly. And I think you can think about some of the things that are happening in the political environment right now, that it's like, how is it like all of a sudden somebody says something and the next day there's like another declaration written? Like there's all of this change that's happening really, really quickly before you can really get a hold of what's happening. It's very similar to what happened in the Supreme Court 2 years ago. And so just be aware of how you are clinging to things that are safety and security for you, and what things you decide to surrender. Do your best to give them fully. So that looks like saying, okay, I'm surrendering this. Perhaps it's like surrendering your current employment as an example, right? That doesn't mean necessarily that God is going to tell you to quit your job. But it does say, whatever relationship that I have to this, where I'm putting believing that I am safe and secure because I have this job ahead of my relationship with you, God, I want to change that. Because when you position things in the right place, you recognize, you remember that you have that job, that opportunity, the things that it provides for you and your family because God has provided it to you. One of the things that God said to me as I was transitioning out of corporate a couple of years ago is, I need you to remember that I wrote your agreement, that I signed your checks, that I am the I am, that I provided for you all along this path. And so there's a the tendency was to hold on and cling to the thing because it felt like that's what was secure. But God was very clear in reminding me that all of that exists at God's pleasure. And so let us make sure that we are not putting things before God. Some of you would call that an idol, and that would be correct. We can idolize our jobs and our bank accounts and status and all of these things, titles. And those things can be a false sense of security because, again, look at what's happening all around us. There are people who thought they were signing up for things, they were agreeing with things because they felt like it was going to create some sense of security. And where are we now? For so many people, they quickly saw that the places they were placing faith in, the people they were placing faith in, it fell apart because it should have never been placed there. So that's a part of the sign of the time that we're in. So we are in this moment of what I would call the great shakeup, where all of the things that you thought you knew are starting to shift, that you are beginning to see. It's like what I'm seeing in this moment is like you're walking up to a building, and let's say it looks like a movie theater, right? And so you're like, oh, let's go in, let's go watch this movie. And you walk up to it, and then you see this like curtain drop from in front of it, and it's just this old dark dank building. It's like what what is on the outside is just simply a facade. It's a sheet. It is a depiction of something, but where you're really going, what you're really walking into, it ain't as advertised on the outside. And so this is a time for us to begin to question everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. We've got to question the things that we have been taught, why we have been taught them, who has taught us. There's something. I want to go to crypto for a moment, and I would just call out for you that if you are looking to learn more about crypto, that Dr. Tanya Evans, you find her as Professor Evans, PROF Evans, online. She has a great podcast on Spotify, Financially Speaking, where on Mondays she does a crypto segment. It's really, really good. And she is brilliant with this. And what's so interesting, one of the things that I learned about watching what's the behavior of what's happening is you watched all of these companies talking badly about crypto, right? But then if you looked at their behavior, they were investing. And so there's something to be said for what people say to you and then what you actually see them do. And in this season, you've got to pay attention to both. Take the words that you hear back and sit them before God. Am I supposed to do something with this? Should I be listening to this? Is this a place, a source that you even trust for me in my condition, in my state, in my moment on this path? Does it make sense? Because perhaps for somebody else, it might be the very thing that they're supposed to be listening to, but it's not for you. So you need to have that before God. And then the other side of it is to watch the behavior, because the behavior is going to tell you more than the words will. How many of you have seen people who have said they stood for certain things, but when the rubber hits the road, they're nowhere to be found? You're standing by yourself. It's important for us to discern what the hearts of people are truly following in this time. And you are going to do that by being eyes wide open, question everything. So this again is what I would refer to as the great shakeup. And I'm seeing the image right now. It's so funny because I don't, I'm vegan, but I'm seeing the image of somebody shaking a bag, and it's like, got chicken in there and the flour, like whatever, breading the chicken. It's like the great shakeup, right? And you shake it and some things stick, but the majority of it is left in the bag. So what does it look like for you to allow this shakeup to happen and pay attention to the things that absolutely are clinging to you, because those are the things that you are supposed to have, know, and do in this season, and let the other stuff settle at the bottom. The next thing, next big theme that came up was around really seeing ourselves. So this is for people who are on your path, who have said yes to your assignment, who are walking in your divine purpose, who have been doing the work to heal, who have been unpacking. And I want to say for many of you right now, you feel like you're in a time of turbulence. Like there's a lot of uprooting, there's a lot of replanting, there's a lot of shifting. You feel like, oh my gosh, I had such clarity 2 3 days ago, 2 weeks ago, and now I feel like I'm right back where I was at the end of last year, in this place of just constant churn and question. And what you need to know about that is it's part of the up down. It's part of the journey that you go on as you are releasing and surrendering and accepting, receiving. Like there is a bit of that because you still have healing happening. And so you're still going to find sometimes old narratives come up. You're still going to find some of the emotional things that you need to work through. You're still going to find some questioning. And sometimes the way that God works is God will bring you to a moment for you to be confident in what it is that you were going through right there at that time, to explore a new skill, to learn something new, to learn or see something about yourself. And then in the moments following that, you might have to pivot to something else. And so we need to treat ourselves like babies in this moment. And I want you to think about what that would look like when there's a brand new baby, right? We are very protective. No one's coming in around the baby that has a cold. Is there a requirement, a reason that they need to know them? People are very protective about, ensuring that there's not too much noise. And if there are animals in the house, they try to keep the animals away from the baby. Like, what are the protective ways that you take care of a newborn? What if you could see yourself like that in who you are in your spiritual being? Because there is a lot shifting around us right now. We've gone through massive shifts in energy. We know that we've seen the separation of the earth. We know that people are on different trajectories. We know that there's a lot of revealing the truth of who people are. And so there's a lot. In addition to the fact that we have the influx of things that are always coming at social media, the old energy of wanting to compare yourself to others' journeys and all of those things. And so this is a moment for you to put a protective cover around yourself, to be really sparingly around what you allow yourself to listen to watch, what you choose to engage with. Every invitation is not a good invitation for you. Every event where people you love gather is not the place for you. Every outing that's available is not the right place for your energy. There is so much happening right now that requires you to be in a place where you are constantly protecting your spirit and what you know to be true. And for those of you who are really stepping boldly into finding your voice and speaking in a way that you know is defined by your divine path, you really want to pay attention to the voices and the noise that you have around you. It is too easy for someone to say something, I'm going to say offhanded, but we never know what the intention could be behind it, right? But to say something that you take on and it reaches something inside of you, it triggers something inside of you and it makes you feel uncomfortable or unsettled. And then it in turn stymies you from saying what you know you need to say, from stepping forward in the way that you need to go. There's a lot of that happening right now. A lot of the delays that people are experiencing have to do with the people who are in close proximity. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to get rid of all the people around you, but it does mean that it is time for you to deepen your discernment. So, in the same way you would protect a newborn, it's time for you to see yourself as a newborn. It is time for you to see yourself, even those of you who are like, I've been walking my spiritual path for a while. Yeah, that's right. But is there an elevation of your gifts? Are you experiencing something different now? Do you have a deeper level of understanding of what you've been called to? Are you using your gifts in a different way, in a different place and space and around different people? Because all of those things create the space for us to treat ourselves a bit differently. And what God wants you to know in this moment is that nurturing the gifts that God has given you is your number one job right now. Nurturing the gifts. And part of nurturing the gifts is taking care of your physical vessel. It's taking care of the environment around you. It's making sure that you have all of the things that you need to grow and thrive. And so protecting yourself from energy around you that may not be suitable for you in this moment is really important. I think in the last three divine guidance episodes, I feel like, at least in the last couple, that it has come through again and again that we really need to pay attention to what we're listening to. I, like you, find myself in the moments where I am going through the continuous scroll, and I try to really do a good job of saying, should I listen to this? Like as I'm going through it. But I can tell you it's too easy to go down the rabbit hole. And not everything that sounds familiar to you is the right thing for you to be listening to. Not everything that sounds familiar is the right thing to be listening to. You've got to deepen your discernment. And so if you see yourself, instead of being like, I should know better because I've been doing this and I've been on this journey for a while, if you see yourself experiencing a level of newness, then you'll remind yourself to protect you first and foremost in a way that is in alignment with what God is nurturing on the inside of you. Another big thing that I saw as I was preparing to deliver this message is a time where, we've been in exposure season. I talk about exposure all the time, but this is deep. I saw a lot of backstabbing happening. And this was not like, the common things that we kind of talk about. These were at a massive scale, and with a lot of really well-known people. And so what you're going to see, particularly in June, is what I'm hearing in this moment, are some really large name people who have been in close proximity with others. Like if you think about people who, like, you think of one person's name, you think of the other, like they're just like in lockstep all of the time. You are going to see these things that look like there was some backstabbing happening, and it's going to be exposed. And what this really is going to be the sign of the time for is that there are alliances that have been built that people have not been forthright about. And those alliances are going to begin to be exposed. We are going to see some significant alliances. And when I say significant, I mean the turning point for what we are experiencing globally. We're going to see them exposed starting in November and then into the beginning of next year. And for many of you that are listening that have a prophetic leading, you are going to see some of these things. God is telling me right now that God is going to begin to show you. And so it will be important for you to make sure that as you see it, you also get your instruction from God about what you're supposed to do with that information, whether you are supposed to share it, whether you are just supposed to know, whether you're supposed to hold it and pray about it. It will be important for you to do that. So these alliances are not favorable. This is why I saw it as backstabbing. They're not alliances that have been created for good. They are alliances that have been created to manipulate. And what's really interesting is that there's some significant figureheads, and you probably can think of a few, but who look like they're running things. But the reality is that even in position where it looks like they're influencing other people, they're actually being used for what's happening behind the scenes. So imagine there's like, there's this front and center. These are the people who are talking directly to you, telling you what's going on, saying whatever it is that they're saying. And then there is a group behind them that's their support system, right? And it looks like, okay, they're backing this person. Well, they are actually the ones who are then being backstabbed by this group behind them that has set the agenda. These agendas that we are navigating in the earth, this is not just specifically in the US, this is global across three major continents. Three major continents. These things are so significant. They're just bigger than big. I don't know what else to say. They are enormous. And it's all been running in the background, and it's been running in the background for a long time, for a long time. One of the things that you probably want to know, like I do, is like, okay, so what do we do about that, right? And it's important for you to stay on your path. on your path. Because the energy that we spend trying to control things that we can't control, it's wasted energy. Where your energy is best spent is doing what it is that you are called to do. You see, sometimes for us, when we are on our path and we are fulfilling our assignment, it might feel small in the moment. It might feel like, well, what good is coming from doing this specific thing? A lot of times when we're having those moments, we don't even recognize that it's just simply a process of us sharpening our saw, right? We're being prepared for the moment when it will be time for us to bring the things that we're doing out into the world. And then we'll see how it's connected to the much bigger purpose, the much bigger plan. And we'll understand why we needed to have those moments where we were standing sharpening the saw for such a long period of time. It's really important. There's the story of I don't even know what it's called, but it's like the person sharpening the axe and how much time he spent sharpening his axe before he had to go cut down the tree, right? And so, like, that's literally what I'm seeing. It's like this time of preparation that we are in might feel exhausting, but it is right on time so that you can be where you're supposed to be and do what you're supposed to do when the time comes. Of course, the other thing that you have the opportunity to do is stay in prayer. Stay in prayer. Look at who God is showing you to align to. And God is saying right now, and it's important for you to write as much as you can about what it is that you're experiencing, what you're questioning, what you're seeing, what you're dreaming. Like, you need a place and a daily practice to capture those things. Because for many of you, you may still be in a place where you're questioning your gifting, and writing is going to help you see the way that God speaks to you. It is also going to reveal to you how God has been showing you some of the mysteries that you have just you've not been able to put the pieces together because they're swirling around in your head and they're not in a place where you can reflect and review them. So and I know that is as much for me as it is for you, and so I appreciate that, God. Um the other thing that I think is important for you to know in this moment is that in the midst of all of the things going on, there is we are not we are in a tough time. And when I say we're in a tough time, I'm not talking about what we see on the surface. I'm not talking about what we experience day to day. I'm talking about what's happening underneath it all. We are in a tough time. We don't even realize all of what is happening to and around us in this moment. And we're really focused, we as a collective are really focused on what we hear and what we see in the physical as opposed to what we know, what God is showing us. And so it's it is very complex. What you need to know is that the answers for what to do, how to prepare, how to take care of yourself, your family, all of that stuff, it is simply available to you should you choose to go to God, to seek from your higher power, to connect in. You will know what you need if you are nurturing that relationship first and foremost. And what God was just saying to me a moment ago is that, and to remember that you are protected. And so one of the things that I saw in preparation, thank you, Holy Spirit, for bringing it back to me, were people standing, and like the way that people stand. And instead of being flat footed and standing firm, like just grounded in, ready, like knowing, like, yeah, I know there's stuff going on, but I know that I know that I know that I am postured in the way that God told me to be. Like, that's what God is looking for from us. And the way that you are going to surrender your fear is by doing that, is by standing boldly and knowing that you are in alignment with what God has shown you. So the more that you can dig yourself in that posture and be confident knowing that God has you, the more that you can do that, the more ease you're going to feel of the fear that you may have and be experiencing in this moment and the moments to come. So instead of scurrying away, You want to be ones that are standing so bold, so confident in the midst of whatever is happening around you, trusting that you will be safe even if you are swept into the storm because you know that God has you. Going back, I want to go back to the alliances revealed for a second, because the other thing that God showed me is that there were people who were scurrying away. So the scurrying remind me they were scurrying away. Like, so some of these very loud, I'm going to use the word obnoxious voices that we hear that have been so very pronounced that as things start to be exposed, it's going to be like, where did they go? Like, what happened to them? Like, scurrying away in a way that you're just like, what, where, like, and it's going to be really quick, as if they disappeared just from like the face of the earth. Like these loud, very boisterous, very just whatever voices that just silence just like that. And this is important for us because a lot of times, that old saying, like the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? So the image that I always have about that are like the people who were like a broken record, like in my corporate environments, were like, I need this, I need this, I need this, right? And they were very loud, they were very boisterous, they were always like very demanding, like, I need to have this, right? And some people can say, like, yeah, it was great because they were trying to protect what they needed for their business or their people, right? When the intentions are good, it's great. But this is like loud and creating distraction, drawing your attention to something away from what really God wants you to pay attention to in this season. And that as things are revealed, it's like whatever perceived power or influence you felt that they had is stripped from them and they are scurrying away. Now that's in, and the problem with this is that we tend to avert our attention to those that are really loud and really boisterous. But if you do that, you're going to miss the voices that are emerging, that are coming specifically for this season, because they won't be like that. They're not going to be those voices that are loud. They're not going to be on every news channel. They're not going to be in everybody's news feed. Like, that's not it. There are select voices and people that you will see God promoting into places and stages like that. There are some. But many of what you see that are very loud and boisterous, where you're just hearing about them over and over and over again, they're going to be scurrying away because what you saw was manufactured influence. And what has been manufactured, again, is the stuff that we are going to see fall. It's the things created in connection with what we thought was safe and secure. And God is saying the infrastructure is broken, it's damaged, and it's being destroyed, the infrastructure. And so some of these people sat in places of influence because they're part of the infrastructure, and that is all being taken apart. So recognize that clinging to a voice or voices that seem to be loud, seem to always have the information, always first, and all of that stuff, following them and expecting to get information from them is going to lead you in a way that is opposite of where you want to be. Because if you follow the empty direction and instruction of those people, you will be left with nothing. I'm asking God, I'm like, is that? And God is like, yep. So just know loud does not necessarily mean follow. And don't allow yourself to be overly influenced by a group of people who seem to have the answers, because you actually have more answers inside of you than they do. When you are tapped into the source, tapped into God, trusting your knowing, trusting what is on the inside of you, you will have the answers you seek. You see, the loud voices are to try and convince you, to make you feel like they know or have something more than what you do. But the truth of the matter is, you actually have the wisdom that you seek. You actually have it. It's just a matter of you trusting it and allowing it to come up. And when you allow yourself to bring that information forward, you're going to be able to see the difference. You will be able to discern what is off by what it is that they're saying. God is really pushing us in this moment to go deeper into what we know to be true. And again, to question everything. So that means not just leaning on what you were taught or the way that you thought things were supposed to be, but truly going back to God to say, help me understand this with fresh eyes and for this moment. If you've ever read a scripture multiple times and every time you go back to it, you learn something different, you see it differently, you apply it differently, that's what this looks like. So you don't have to throw out everything that you've learned, but you do need to be in a place where you're questioning it, where you're open to the understanding that maybe what I learned was at this level of surface, and there are 3 or 4 or 5 more levels for me to dig into. There's more now, and I'm more mature in the things of God to be able to be ready to receive that next level of information. Whew. So these are the signs of the times. I'm going to share with you the last thing that God shared with me before coming in to share this with you tonight. And what God, where I was directed was to Revelations 6:4. And I'm going to read it from the King James Version. It says, "And there went out another horse that was red, and the power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword." It is so important that we understand the sign of the times. There are multiple ways that you can sit with this scripture and understand its meaning. And I encourage you to do that in the presence of God so God can help you see what it is for you to see about this. And I will tell you that peace is a choice that God has given to all of their children at every turn. We always have the opportunity to choose peace. Always. Peace resides within us. It is a part of love. And yes, sometimes things have to change for us to get back to a place of peace. But it does not mean there is only one way that change can come. So to allow yourself to be convinced that things have to happen a certain way in order for us to find ourselves at peace, I'm going to encourage you again to question everything. Sit with this scripture, take it to God, and let God show you. Just because things have been allowed does not mean that the intended outcome is what has to be. What it's supposed to be is that the outcome is in alignment with God's will. And if we want to go to what God's will is for us, it is always for us to have the promises that God has set aside for us. Peace is a part of that. Love is that. Abundance is that. And so I would say to you that even in this moment where we recognize the sign of the times and the things that are being portrayed and relayed and the things that people are trying to stir up, the more angst that we get, the less settled we are in our truth, that we are peaceful, that we are of love, that we are abundant. The more that we settle ourselves in our truth and we focus on those things, the more that we will experience that in our lifetime, the more that we will be able to help others see that it is possible. That is our assignment. And I can say that knowing, because I already know if you are drawn to listen to the divine guidance, then you know who you are. And you know, peace is ours. It is ours to maintain, to convey, to encourage, to recognize that it is the gift that God gives us in every moment. We can always choose peace. So we do not have to fall to the way that people are trying to create dissension and fighting and all of this stuff in the world. We do not have to. We do not. And God will give us instruction for how. So that is what I have for you for the divine guidance for the month of April. There clearly is a lot happening around us. I really hope that you heard the word around seeing yourself as a babe, right? Seeing yourself as being renewed, seeing yourself going through a moment of up leveling and an opportunity for you to really protect yourself and cover yourself and pay attention to what is around you. I know that many of you, we're are in the Lenten season. Many of you have been fasting associated. I will say that one of the things that I feel really strongly in this moment is that when you decide that you are going to fast in this season, um, so what God is saying in this moment is fasting is a lifestyle. And it is always important that you are considering the fast as something that is of significance. Remember that in the time where there were offerings, it was always something of meaning. And that is what the intention is. Sometimes we think about the things that we will sacrifice. Like there's so many fasts that are related to food. And so people typically lean to that. And sometimes there are things that are much more significant. What if you are someone who's really wrestling with trusting yourself and trusting your voice? And there's an opportunity for you to fast from fear. I'm going to just sit back and let you think about that for a moment. Like, what if that's the thing that you surrendered to God and you studied the word around how God does not give us a spirit of fear, around the encouragement to stand bold, what it means to really trust God, to stand in faith? What if that is the posture that you focused on through the time that you were fasting? Because then you are building yourself up to that which you are going to be required to be. So I really just want to encourage you to really be thoughtful about what it is that you are surrendering. And what I'm hearing God say again is to remind you that it is a lifestyle and we should be approaching God, connecting with our inner wisdom, with the divine, to really know what that fasting looks like for us. Understood. And then the last thing for us is to remember the power of what's important in community. I will tell you that there is no question, I've said this before in divine guidance, that we are coming into seasons where we are going to need one another. We will not individually have all of the skills that are required for us to navigate through the seasons up ahead. We won't have all the information. Each of us individually will not have it all. God's requirement is that we're in community with one another. And so make sure that you are seeking God around who needs to be in your community. What are you missing from your community? What are some of the things that are important that God wants you to have? Who are the people around you that God says that are to be in community with you, that you are to build a trust, that there is to be some reciprocation? And let me spend a moment on the word reciprocation. A lot of times, especially when we are growing, right? When we are in our season of transition, it feels like we are in a space where we are desiring receiving. So if you have been on your deep healing work, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like, I don't even have anything to give. I just need to receive. I just need to receive because I've been giving so much for so long and now I'm a new being, right? Like now I'm new, I'm renewed. And so I need more, right? And there is always a way that you can reciprocate. Always, always. It may not be an apple for apple type of exchange, but there are ways to reciprocate. And so ensure that as you're building and strengthening your relationship and community, that you're saying, what can I give into this relationship? What can I give in exchange for this thing? Right? There are probably people in your circle that you can pick up the phone and call, and they will set aside time for you. Or I think all the time about, the people who I know I can reach out to and just say, like, can you please pray and pray with me? Like, and they will just be in it for me. And so what's my way of reciprocating, right? It might be praying for them. It might be covering them if I know there's something going on. It might be, helping out in some way. There are ways that you can reciprocate that are aligned with your gifts and the truth of who you are. There's always something of value that you have, because those are the kinds, if it's a godly relationship, that's the way God creates the relationship. So there is always something there. In our own wisdom, we do not always see the thing that the other person needs that we have, right? We might not see it as a gap or as an opportunity to pour into them with whatever that thing is that we have to offer. So when you bring God into the relationship, God can show you how what it is that you have fits something that they need. And in a good relationship where there is a beautiful exchange happening, right? That reciprocation comes in a way that the person is not asking for it. And so it's funny because what's coming up for me right now is like when you build relationships with mentors and mentees, right? One of the things that most people and programs will tell you is that as a mentee, there is a huge value that you have with sharing perspective that the mentor might not have, right? There may be some things that questions that you ask that create curiosity for them. It might be an innovative mindset. If there's a generational difference, you may be able to just bring in a voice that's totally different than what that person has for the area of business they're responsible for. And so there is an exchange that happens in the best of those relationships. It's not just one way. And building community requires that we are connected to one another in ways that we reciprocate. So ensure that when you are building and strengthening your community, even in the times where you feel like you may not have anything to give, perhaps what you feel depleted of is not yours to give, but maybe there is something else that you have in abundance that you can share. And for some of you, you're like, I would do this for them. Like maybe it's prayer, right? Oh, I would pray for them, but I don't know how to pray. Yes, you do. I'm not good at being a listener. You can build the skill. You can be better at it. And so consider that maybe in this moment, you're being pulled into an opportunity to strengthen a skill that will be important for you down the road. There is nothing that is happening in this moment that was without intention. Everything that God is doing is in preparation for us. It's in preparation for the next, for where we were going through the whirlwind. It's in preparation to understand the things that are happening around us so we can see past the outer layer, so we actually see what's behind it on the other side. It's in preparation that we're not feeling like we're clinging to other people and other things to help us stay safe or to listen to voices that would lead us in the wrong direction. Like it is with intention. So know that this time and this season matters, and your choice to say yes to what it is that God is showing you is so important. Say yes and walk in your purpose. And know that the next steps, the next pieces are going to be revealed to you when it's time. This is a moment where I think of the poem Don't Quit, and it has a line in there about how close you are when you could have captured the victor's cup. Like you were just all you had to do was get around the bend and then the finish line was there. And for so many of you, you are so tired and feeling so deeply defeated. And some of this is coming because you've been watching other people and you've been watching their path and their trajectory, and you're like, why not me? Right? Because it's not your path. That's their path. That's their path. You don't know what happens 3 blocks from here, right? You don't know what happens 6 months from now. That's their path. Don't get exhausted. keep cheering, keep cheering and encouraging them along on their journey, because your journey is moving at the pace that it's supposed to. You are going to be where you're supposed to be on time if you faint not, if you keep going. So this is the moment where, if you need the pep talk from your coach, I'm gonna lean in and tell you, you are too close to let go now. Too close. So keep moving. Keep going. Keep trusting. Keep showing up. Keep doing it. But be all of who you are as you do it. This is not a season for the old facades and the old versions of self. It's not a fake it until you make it. It's showing up in your truth and continuing to show up, because that is how the vulnerability is how you will be strengthened, so that you will be prepared for what is to come. And then I've said this is the last thing 100 times, but God is showing me one more thing. And so I didn't know that was coming. But I want to just remind you that in a season of preparation, all of the things that come up for us, this is really important from a healing perspective. The things that start to surface for us are meant for us to see it and to take action. Action might be like rest. Action could be something other than, like, fighting, but the things that are coming up there, they are begging your attention so that you will be prepared for what it is that is about to be placed into your hands. So if you want to support yourself best on your journey, it's about paying attention to where you are and asking God, what else do I need to be prepared for what is to come? And if you shift the why hasn't it come yet? I'm waiting to how else can you help me be prepared? What are the things I should pay attention to? What else needs to be healed? You will be really using that time to your advantage. So that is what I have for you on our April dive into the divine guidance. They're loaded for bear, and there's a lot coming. I know that when we meet in the summertime, that there will be so much more that we will be preparing for. But this in this season, sharpening your discernment, understanding the sign of the times, this is the thing. This is the lesson. This is the assignment. This is the focus. This is the focus. And the other things that I've talked about today are things for you to pay attention to, right? They're things for you to watch out for, things that you're going to say, yep. And so that looks like the people scurrying away, the loud voices. And this looks like more revealing. And it looks like, we get to the November timeframe and we're seeing all of what has been happening behind the scenes, behind those scenes where these relationships were formed and have been playing in our faces, because there's no other way to say it. So I hope that if you, I hope that this resonated with you. Please take a moment and drop in the comments anything for you that was coming up, things that are aligned with what you've heard, with what what God has shown you. Let me know how it resonates with you. Are there things that you're still concerned about? All of that, I'm really curious and interested to know. Please make sure that you subscribe if you haven't already, and share the episode. So I think that it is a beautiful opportunity for all of us to help the people around us also be prepared for the season to come. Want to also let you know that coming up on the 21st of this month, I have the opportunity to join my sister, Dr. C, on her platform to have a special session called God's Got You. You can find it all over our social media, and you can purchase your ticket to be on Zoom with us. And this session is all about preparing for the shift to walk in your divine purpose. So what are the things, what happens to you when there are shifts that God is calling you to make, or shifts that are happening to you? So how can you build your confidence in what God is showing you in the moment, so that you can walk confidently into the next chapter of your life? And we're going to dissect it. We're going to share some stories. We will share some divine leadings, and equip you with some tools to be able to navigate that season. So I'm really excited about that. And then at the end of the month, I'm really excited to share a 2-day masterclass called The Divine Pivot. You'll be able to find more of that information for those of you who are Anika insiders, who are part of our newsletter, part of our community, they will have the first opportunity to grab those seats when they come out. And so at the end of the week, you'll have the opportunity to see those. But it will go out tomorrow to my inner circle. And so if you want to know how to be a part of that inner circle, make sure you take a look at the show notes and join in all of the fun, right? Help create your remarkable life. That is what I have for you all. And I will see you next week on the Anika Apple podcast. And I'll be back, of course, at the beginning of the month of May with May's Divine Guidance. As always, I wish you peace and blessings. Thanks for joining.